Welcome to the 1.7 multiplying integers video. Today we're going to start off by talking about the different meanings that this sign negative can take on. Many of us have heard that the negative is here to tell us which side of 0. The negative sign also in the past has told us to subtract. So you've probably seen it as minus or subtract, take away. The third meaning of this sign, though, is actually opposite. And in most contexts, this is what we're going to want to remember this sign to be. So in this case, we could also call this, instead of negative 4, the opposite of 4. If we're on the number line, we have 0. We take it out 4 spaces to the right like we've been used to. And then to go out the same distance but in the opposite direction takes us to that same place. So it has the same absolute value, but it's in the other direction. Well, negatives play a funny role when you start to put them together. So here we have something kind of interesting. We wouldn't read this the negative of negative 4. We'd actually use the third definition of that symbol, which is opposite. So this is the opposite of 4. It kind of gets a little bit wordy that way, but in reality you can kind of start to fuse them together as well. So we have the opposite of negative 4, which just ends up being 4. So you can kind of think of this by looking at it from the inside out. So from the inside, we have this negative 4. So the first one is we go out 4, and then we go the opposite of that to get to negative 4. Then we have an opposite outside of the parentheses. So we're already here. We want to then go opposite of that value, and that takes us right back. So in the end, what we see is the opposite of an opposite really doesn't change any position. They cancel each other. They take us right back to where we started. So when we get to multiplication of integers or any rational number, what we find that this is true as well. So if I were to take the example, let's say, number 1, negative 5 times 5. Well, the shorthand of this, as you've learned, is, or I should say this is shorthand of something that you've been dealing with for a lot of this year already, which is addition. So this could be rewritten as 5 times negative 5, and we would write this out if it was addition as negative 5 plus negative 5 plus negative 5 plus negative 5, and you can see that this gets kind of tedious here, plus negative 5. And in the end, we add these up just like you've been doing. Same sign, they continue in the same direction. We add up the distance from 0, and we have, lo and behold, negative 25. Well, in this way, we could also think of this as the opposite of 5 times 5. Well, 5 times 5 is 25. The opposite of that is negative 25. There's only one opposite sign. If I were to change this problem, negative 5 times negative 5, it's the same idea. We have 5 groupings of negative 5, but we have negative 5 groupings. So that means, in the sense of, we're going the opposite direction. So here, we could say we have the negative of, or the opposite of the negative of the value 5 times 5. So there's that kind of weird looking parentheses, but it's really saying the same thing. 5 times 5, 25, then the opposite, and then the opposite of that takes us back to positive. So opposite of 25 is negative 25. The opposite of negative 25 is positive 25. Let's do one more just for make sure we have the basis for what I'm looking for tomorrow. So the next one that we're going to look at is 3 times 6 times negative 3. So in this case, we only have one negative sign, or if you want to use the third definition, one opposite sign. So we're going to have the opposite only of this value, this product, whatever this equals. So we do this in parts. So we have 3 times 6, so we have 18, times 3, which then gives us 54. And we're going to have the opposite of that because we had, as we saw before, the opposite here. Now it needs to tell us the opposite of that value. So we bring the opposite of that value, and that's where we are. If you have any questions, make sure to bring them tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit further about how this applies to other areas of math as well.